What's wrong with that?
Because I'm not guilty and can't torture me.
Okay, I know that I can't. Stop. I know that I cannot under the Constitution. But let's assume that the Constitution didn't exist and I could torture you. And ultimately you confess. What's wrong with that?
It could be a lie.
Confess the wrong thing.
Okay, who said that?
Yes, breathe. Yes.
Okay, who said that? Okay. The problem, very good. The problem with torture is that torture doesn't assure the truth. If I twist your arm bad enough, you're going to say whatever it is that I want you to say, whether or not you did it, so that I would stop the torture. So it's not reliable. It's not reliable. So, all right, shh, listen. So there's no reliability. And there is a public interest in preventing violence to take place. Because, realistically, the police don't want to spend hours and hours and hours and hours interrogating you when they could take you into a room, beat you up for 15 minutes and get you to testify. I mean, if they were given their preference, probably that would be a preferential treatment. So the prohibition against self-incrimination is intended to prohibit police or the government from doing exactly that, from torturing a statement out of you. And I will tell you, put your hand down for a second, I will tell you this. Our government of the United States, did employ torture behavior in order to try to get information from people who they had captured and believed were terrorists. And I know that we kind of think about this and say, terrorists, I don't really care how they're treated because they're terrorists. But what they were doing was a technique called waterboarding. And waterboarding is a technique, and I don't know exactly how it's done, but I can tell you that what happens is that the subject of the interrogation is made to feel that they're going to drown. And sometimes they actually do drown and they're brought back to life over and over and over again until they're persuaded to say whatever it is that the interrogator is looking for.
Didn't they do that in the movie?
And the problem with that sort of interrogation is that you cannot rely on the information that you're obtaining as accurate information. During a very bad period in American history, in the city of Salem, there were a group of citizens who had been accused of witchcraft. And witchcraft was a no-no, was against the law. It was going to stop. And what happened, put your hand down, and what happened in Salem was that people were interrogated, and they were threatened, and they were forced. And they turned in their neighbors, their friends, said, they're witches. I'm a witch, and they're witches. They weren't witches, and their friends weren't witches, but it was the only way they could get the interrogators to stop. And many people were ultimately executed in the Salem witch trials as a consequence of these bad interrogation techniques. So in America, we have a long history of this technique not working. And therefore, the Fifth Amendment is there to say to the police, you can't do it anymore. It's not acceptable. And if you do it and you obtain a confession, that confession is not going to be used because number one, it's not reliable, and number two, you acted against the law. Fifth Amendment.
Can I go drink water?
Not right now. Let's finish. Okay. Due process of law. Due process, by the way, due process of law is a term that is used not in one, but in two amendments. Not in one, but in two amendments to the Constitution. It's found in the Fifth Amendment and it's found in the 14th Amendment. Ricky.
Due process of law.
Due process of law.
Pretty much means that a person isn't found guilty until when a person isn't found guilty for some reason.
a person is not guilty until proven innocent. In what you say, there is due process, and what you said that has due process is proven. Valentina.
It means that no one can be punished for a crime until the law has been fairly applied to the case.
The word process. What does process mean? What does process mean? Steps. Steps. That's exactly what it means. Ruben. What did Valentina said process means? Ruben, I need you to be engaged in class. I really do need you to be engaged. Okay, Valentina, could you repeat that?
Process means steps.
Steps. So if I ask you, what is the process of shooting a basketball? You would tell me what?
Each step to
Okay, tell it to me.
line up your feet, put the
Think it
put the
through.
put the ball over your head and
Fire.
flick your fist, your wrist. I mean, and let the ball go. And jump.
Okay, nothing happens to your knees and
And
your.
you jump, you flick, you bend your knees and jump.
That's the process. So, knowing that process are steps, what do you think due process means?
The process that you have to do, that you have to do those process in order.
It's not due, D-O.
Oh, like.
Eddie.
Due process is the process of doing something.
The process of doing something, but we're looking for what is due process. What is meant by due process? Okay, go.
Necessary process.
Necessary process for what? Yes.
Multiple.
Multiple steps for what? Yes.
Oh, interrogating someone.
To interrogate. No. Yes.
Of the crime.
Due process means that everybody is guaranteed a certain process before they're found guilty. Okay? Everybody is guaranteed a certain process. In other words, I can't arrest you and put you in jail and that's it. There has to be some steps between the arrest and you going to jail for the rest of your life that I have to, as a government, do. Okay? So, today you say trial, but there's more than just a trial. Due process are all of the steps that the government is required to take in order to resolve a given problem. Whether it's a criminal problem or a civil problem, it doesn't matter. It's the steps. So, this is a higher order question, Alexander. I want you to think about it. Okay? And it requires you putting a lot of things together. It's not an easy question, and the answer is not in the book. I said that due process is found in two amendments, the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment. Why do you think that that term is found in two amendments?
So they can enforce it more? Like,
So they can enforce it more? Really? I mean, I understand your reasoning about it, but no, that's not what it means. Somebody else, Cecilia. I said it wasn't in the book, so don't look at the book. You don't know.
Wait, can you repeat the question?
Yes. Why do you think due process is found in two amendments, the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment?
Wait.
Yes. We have last year. Okay, anybody else? Madam Secretary. Why do you think it's in two amendments?
Because it's really important.
It's important. There's a certain sense of repeating things that are important. Martin Luther King kept saying, I have a dream, right? I have a dream, I have a dream. So that was important. But it's more than just because it's important. Madam Historian, why do you think that it was found in two amendments? Madam Historian, there is wisdom in what you say, although I don't think you understand it. But you're right to a certain extent. What possible two reasons could there be for due process? Reuben!
Probably like in those two amendments, there's a lot of steps that have to be taken before.
It's talking about the same steps. Same thing, same right. Why is it mentioned twice? Ricky! Okay, Chum!
Because
and also those amendments need.
I think I saw a light bulb going off over here, so I'm gonna jump from here there. Yes.
Okay,
The
so
labor
the
movement.
First Amendment
Listen.
is that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. So there's
No,
a
no.
process,
It's more than that.
so there's a process for you to become.
Yeah, but no, it has nothing to do with the citizenship. Okay. I said it was a tough question. Put your hand
It
down.
was.
But I'm gonna tell you why it's a tough question. In order to solve this puzzle about the tough question, you have to understand what the 14th Amendment is and why the 14th Amendment is important. When the 5th Amendment was passed, it was part of the Bill of Rights, and the Bill of Rights only talked about the behavior of the federal government to the people. It didn't involve the state government's behavior to the people. The Bill of Rights only involved the behavior of the federal government to the people, not the behavior of the state governments to the people. Okay? So, if you are guaranteed certain rights, it's from behavior of the federal government. The states could still have slavery, and they could still have you incarcerated as a slave, and all these things. That was at the beginning of the nation. But later on, something happened that said to the federal government, you have to worry about how these states are behaving towards their citizens. What event happened that led the federal government look at the behavior of the states towards their citizens? Yes. The what? The Civil War. The Civil War. Before the Civil War, if you're an African American, the states didn't in any way observe any of those Bill of Rights towards people who were enslaved. As a matter of fact, they thought that these enslaved people were property. After the Civil War, they're no longer property. But the states really don't want to treat them like white individuals, because the states hate them now, because you did this to us. It was all because of you. There was that factor. So all of a sudden the federal government says, wait a second. We need to have the same rights that apply between the federal government and the people to apply between the states and the people. So by placing due process in the 14th Amendment, which is an amendment that is directed at states' action towards its people, basically the states have to guarantee you the same due process rights that the federal government does. So it's really looking at two different governments' treatment of the people. Fifth Amendment applies to the federal government treatment of the people. 14th Amendment applies to the state's treatment of the people. So now both governments have to give you due process rights if you were arrested, accused of a crime, or if you have a controversy or a problem, both governments have to guarantee you due process. All right, that's due process of law. Eminent domain. We had something that we wrote about eminent domain. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why could not Lincoln free the slaves?
Oh, because he didn't have the power to do that.
Take
He
private
didn't have
property from the public.
because it was private property, and under the Constitution, the government can't take your private property, but it has to give you what?
Compensation.
Could you imagine the United States government would have been bankrupt if it had to pay for all of the slaves? So,
Mr. Knappy, if I steal glasses from you, I can go to jail.
yes, but it has nothing to do with eminent domain. It has to do with the fact that you committed a crime under state law, which is called theft. Yes, sir. I can't hear you, and neither can the microphone.
Eminent domain is sort of like when there's like a piece of land there, and then you want to buy it. For example, you want to build a hospital there. That's also public use because the hospital.
You're very intuitive. The government sometimes has the need to take land that belongs to the people. For example, the Everglades might be in need of the government buying land on the border in order to protect the Everglades. The government can't take the land and say, okay, now it's mine. It can, however, take the land and say, now it's mine, but I am going to pay you for that land.